So in this example, I'm going to show you the type of question that I usually tested from cross multiplication. So by now, you already gotten some practice on cross multiplication. And during exam, okay, not just for Sec 1 exam, in fact, for Sec 2, Sec 3, or Sec 4 exam, one of the common things that they will ask is getting ratios from cross multiplication. Okay, so but the technique will still be the same, like the basic technique, like the one that we did at the start. So the method is like adding something on both sides, subtracting something on both sides, multiply something on both sides, or dividing something on both sides. So the technique is still the same idea. So it's just that you need to have awareness of what is the question asking you. So for example, here in 4a, you are given a simple fraction. You can see it's one fraction equal to one fraction. So if it's one fraction equal to one fraction, you can do the cross multiplication. So the question asks you to find the value of x equal to y. So this is ratio like what you learn in primary school. But in secondary, ratio can also be a fraction. So you need to get the idea that ratio can also be written as a fraction. So in fact, we can interchange between ratio and fraction. Okay. So how are you going to do this, right? You get your usual cross multiply first. So you get your usual cross multiply. Okay, after you do your usual cross multiply, get all the x to one side, get all the y to one side. So it doesn't matter which side, you can decide for yourself. So in my case, right, I'm going to subtract 6x on both sides. So I'm going to subtract 6x on both sides. All right. Okay, I'm going to subtract 6x on both sides. Then actually all my x is on one side already. Okay, then I'm going to do a plus 10x on both sides. So you go and do a plus 10x on both sides. Sorry, plus 10y. So after that, you will be getting 2x on one side and then y on the other side. So if you can hit this until this point, you get your method mark. Okay, then the next thing is, right, you bear in mind what fraction you want. You bear in mind what fraction you want. So we wanted a x over y. You wanted x over y. So you can see y is in the denominator. So in this sense, right, I'm going to divide by y on both sides. Okay, y is in the denominator, so I'm going to divide by y on both sides. So you will get this equal to 1. Okay, remember your job is to get x over y. So now you're going to divide by 2 on both sides. So you will get 1 over 2. So in fact, how I will answer the question, because the question asked me in a ratio format. So I will reply in a ratio format. So x is to y is 1 is to 2. Okay, so you can see the process. Before the red color process is the normal kind. So the normal one is like your objective is to shift all the x to one side, all the y to one side. It doesn't matter which side. So my habit is I always put x on the left side. Okay, it can be interchangeable. Okay, so we're going to go for this technique for the next few questions. Okay. Okay, so for part B, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to cross multiply first. So when I cross multiply, Okay, so presumably you don't have any issue. So I just presume that you are okay to cross multiply, you are okay to expand, you are okay to minus 3a on both sides. In this case, I can divide by -1 on both sides also. If you don't like to see -1 on both sides. So again, until here, your teacher will give you the method marks. If your cross multiplication can lead you nicely here, you will be given some method marks. And from here, your job is to try to get A over B. So if you want to get A over B, B is in the denominator. So I'm going to divide both sides by B. So I'm going to do a divide on both sides by B. And from here, you can cancel. So A over B is 12. Okay, so do you look at what the question wants? The question, based on what the question wants, then you got to do accordingly. So the method is somehow fixed or not fixed, because you got to look at what the question is asking for you. So if in this question, the question is asking that B is in the denominator, then you got to divide B on both sides. If it's A in the denominator, then you got to divide A on both sides. You got to varies according to the question. Okay, now in the next two questions, you find that it's a bit of variation because right now the ratio has some numbers. The ratio has some numbers. Okay, so in this case, right, if the ratio has some numbers, you might see it as, so you can have a thinking process like this. So think of the ratio in this way as 3 over 4 multiplied by x over y. 3 over 4 multiplied by x over y. So if I see it this way, I'm going to focus on getting x over y. Okay, so I will still be focusing on doing x over y. Okay, so here we see as 3 over 4 times x over y. Okay, so I'm going to cross multiply again. Okay, so I'm going to assume like you got no issue with the cross multiply and you got no issue with bringing all the x over. Okay, so I assume you'll be okay with doing all this. Okay, then I'm going to do a plus y on both sides. Okay, so once you reach something like this, okay, so you can try to simplify the number. So in this case, I can try to divide by -2. So can see? So the blue color part is just like cross multiply, expand everything, and then shuffle everything left. So in the end, you will end up all the x on one side, all the y on one side. It's only after this, then you focus on getting what the question wants. So the question wanted 3x over 4y. So I'm going to be focusing on x over y first. Okay, focus on x over y. So like with all previous question, if you like x over y is in the denominator, you shall divide by y. Okay, so if y is in the denominator, you shall divide by y on both sides. If x is in the denominator, then you divide by x on both sides. So in this case, I will get I divide by y, then this is what I gotten. And my job is to get a x over y. So I need to divide by 9 on both sides. I need to get rid of the 9 there. So you divide by 9 on both sides. So you already you're getting very, very close to 3x over 4y. So after this, you multiply 3/4 on both sides. You multiply 3/4 on both sides. Because when you multiply 3/4 on both sides, you will have gotten the fraction that the question is asking. Then from there, you punch calculator on the other side, 7 over 9 times 3 over 4. So that is the final answer. So eventually, in a nutshell, you are still like dividing on both sides, something on both sides, multiply something on both sides. Okay, or adding something on both sides, subtracting something on both sides. But you got to look at what the question wants. So everything depends on how the question is phrased, how the number is like. But the method is the same idea. Okay, so one last question here. So one last question, the question is asking for 7p over q. So for 7p over q, you can think of it as 7p over q as 7 times p over q. If you think of it as 7 times p over q, you focus on p over q. Then later on, you multiply 7 on both sides. Okay, so go for your cross multiplication first. Okay, so for this last question, I'm going to mental a bit. You do not need to mental. You do your usual method. Make sure you got no careless. So shift all the p to one side, all the q to one side. Okay, so I'm doing some mental here. So if you want, you can do your usual method. Okay, so in this case, right, I can divide by 4 first. I want to make the number nicer first. Okay, so after this, I'm going to focus on getting my p over q. Q is in the denominator. So whatever that's in the denominator, you got to divide. So 3p over q equal to 4q over q. If you do it, then you will gotten this. And if your objective is to get p over q, you got to get rid of the 3. You divide by 3 on both sides. So that will totally isolate the p over q. And the last thing you need to do is to put in the 7. Put in the 7 that the question wants. So you multiply 7 on both sides according to what the question wants. You will get a 7p over q and just punch calculator on the other side. So that's the answer. So even though it's the same strategy, honestly speaking, sometimes this type of question, some students, even the Sec 4, they might forget how to do. Okay, but the technique is back to the same thing. You hear me keep saying, you divide something on both sides, you multiply something on both sides. And you add something on both sides, you subtract something on both sides after the cross multiplication. So in the first place, your cross multiplication must be done properly first. Okay, so summarize the method, cross multiply, shift all the x on one side, all the y on one side. If it's not x and y, then shift the two algebra separately. So shift A to one side, B to one side. You look at what the question wants. Look at the denominator. Whatever the denominator, you got to divide both sides by the denominator. Then you do according to what the number is showing you. Keep your objective in mind, or else you'll find this type of question really very difficult. So it's one of the exam tested question.